Welcome, everyone. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Deva. As we prepare to continue with our review or our first learning, as the case may be, of fundamental key concepts of Vedanta, the understanding of which with a clean slate, the grounding in these fundamentals, which will enable us to receive wisdom teachings with greater depth, greater penetration, greater effectiveness as we prepare to continue in this journey. Let us begin with a sense of gratitude and reverence with our opening prayers to this parampara, this lineage, this tradition, because of which we have the good karmic fortune and through the divine orchestration of Ishvara to be receiving this wisdom from an authentic living teacher. And so as our opening prayers come onto your screen, I invite you to join me in chanting along or simply to listen. And on an inhale, we will chant Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Om Shanti Prakashaya Namaha. Om Ayodhyanathaya Namaha. Om Shunyacharya Namaha. Om Atmatattvam Namaha. Om Vidyatattvam Namaha. Om Suryaya Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Now I would like to welcome Sadhvi Ishani to take us forward.
Jai Ma, welcome. So we continue with our series on key Vedanta concepts. This is the second session of this series, and last session we explored the concept of samsara. We looked at the difference between the outer world and our inner world, this personal reality, unique reality we have that's inside the mind called samsara. And this samsara we explored is very much prone to this cycle of attachments that keeps us sliding deeper and deeper into this endless chasing of what we want, and running from what we don't like, and then collapsing into a sense of victimhood, grief, sadness when either one happens. And then we feel angry about the whole setup. And so because we feel overcome with this cycle, we descend into a kind of utter confusion and start to act in self-sabotaging ways, other harming ways. And the cycle continues. So we had some reflections on that, and perhaps in the intervening time, you've done some reflection on this as well. So today we will encounter a satsanga, continuation of this satsanga with Acharya Shunya, that will take that conversation forward. Acharya Shunya describes her experience learning these concepts for the first time herself. The format, the way that they would receive this learning, process this learning, and really embody it in their own knowingness. First, they would, in the Gurukulam, they would hear the satsanga. They would hear Baba teach. And then there would be a few days of just silence, no more teaching, no talk, where they would spend time each day being quiet with themselves and the words that they had heard. And then there would be a stage where they would put down into writing. They would articulate through writing their understanding, their questions, the threads that it pulls together for them. So there would be a inner silence and contemplation, then a writing again independently. And then would come this dialogue where they could clarify their questions, where they could share their understanding, and the teacher would say, you're getting there, but see this facet. How does this connect and bring more fullness to your understanding or anchor it more deeply? So this is and here in this for us as the community, we don't exactly have the environment to support this time today for you to experience a small window of the silent contemplation. And that is what is called mananam. And you will probably have heard this word many times, but that is where mananam happens. That is what mananam is. That we'll hear shortly a 25-minute satsanga from Acharya Shunya. Its topic is on the nature of the mind. Then, once it closes, I'll offer you a full 5 minutes. I'll actually count these minutes for you. So it'll really be 5 minutes. So what I mean by that is, after we've heard from our teacher, we'll unmute ourselves, but be silent, okay? So we can experience our collective silence. You know what I mean? So we should be silent. So that means now to make arrangements to be able to be silent in that space. It means phones on silent. It means maybe closing a door where you are, or, you know, informing folks around you that you'll be in silence, but other people can hear you. And so for those 5 minutes, we will just think about those concepts that we've heard. In this satsanga, it's rich. As you know, these satsangas are rich. So many things are touched on. So you'll become silent and find out what echoes remain. And the question to ask yourself at that time is, let me contemplate on what I've heard. So you're bringing your mental attention to what you've heard. And the request is, at this time is not the time to write something. It's not the time to draw something. It's not the time to express, which is a kind of expression. No, we may not be using the mouth, but so we're only being present in silence with the teacher's words that are echoing within. Then after that 5 minutes, we'll still have another 20-25 minutes of our session. So if you feel called, a few folks can share from this richly fueled mananam practice that they've participated in. During those 5 minutes, I'll just give a few gentle reminders to come. All right. So how are we feeling? Oh, okay. I'm seeing some challenges. Okay. Has the idea of this silence and contemplation come through at least? You're grasping what our intention and plan is for today? All right, wonderful. So I'll now invite us to receive this satsanga from Acharya Shunya. So let us now view this satsanga and receive these teachings.
The whole thing is to burst this samsara bubble moment to moment. Moment to moment. And when we burst it, what really is left then is a very different kind of mind. So mind plus world is samsara, but mind alone is sattva. The basic nature of mind, and I'll go here right away. The basic nature of mind is sattva. And for those of you who are new here and the webinar, there are 3 qualities of the mind known as tamas, rajas, and sattva. These are vibrational qualities of the mind. Tamas tends to hold the mind in inertia and ignorance. Rajas tends to spin the mind in incessant but unexamined motion. Unexamined motion. So if your mind is, it's almost like particles or qualitative vibration. So if your mind has more tamas particles or tamas vibration or tamas coding, then the personality through the mind would also be lazy, dull, and spiritually and in many other ways somewhat behaving in an ignorant manner. Who are ignorant people? Ignorant people are, they will repeat self-destructive patterns, they will repeat, dysfunctional behaviors, they will stay gripped in dysfunctional relationships, they will not be able to make any move because it's tamas. And move as in, many people want to move, and what would rajas do is want to bang the door and leave the relationship. But a sattva person would just be in the relationship first before they walk out without a plan as to where they'll spend the night. And, they would neither be the victim, they would neither be the aggressor. But if sattva is there, then one would step back and say, what's going on here? They would first calm their own samsara, they would look at another person, they would change their behavior and then evaluate. And if they leave, they'll leave with a real plan. So the point is that the real nature of mind is known as manas, but the another word, mind, is in the Veda and Upanishads, mind is called sattva. Because your mind is not by nature or by default trying to give you a problem. Actually, it's almost like your mind has been overtaken by two mental doshas or energy systems called tamas and rajas. And what we have to do is, as long as rajas and tamas are dominant in our mind, they will lead to more raga and more dvesha. Bottom line. When you have rajas and tamas, you're unconscious, you are gripped in patterns, and you will be forever seeking what you're attracted to and wanted at any cost, and you are forever being repelled and irritated and overwhelmed by what is repelling you. You just won't have any distance from it to rethink of a whole new possibility, which I'm not even talking about right now because I want to focus on what's really your mind. So some people say, I wish I could shoot my mind, it's such a problem. No, don't shoot your mind, just broom it. Broom away the tamas and rajas, and that is where we become a sattva form. Cultivate sattva. And how do you broom away rajas and tamas? So what happens is with tamas, it causes chronic ignorance. With raga, it causes chronic restlessness. And because of that, the third thing, mala, means like, it's almost like the smelly waste. This raga, dvesha, these things are almost like they shouldn't be there. So somebody asked me recently, she said, well, you have a pure mind. Do you have a mind? I mean, that was very insulting. I do have a mind, thank you very much. But because that student, or not my student, because that person is part of a philosophical group and knew some things about this language, I said, my mind is there, but it is now in its pure sattva form. So I can say no when I want to, I can say yes when I want to, but I'm not being led by an unconscious script of attraction, aversion, sorrow, anger, and then delusion. And then behaving in I'm lost, I'm confused, I'm suffering, I'm hateful, all over the place, So all of this on the right side is totally optional. And what is on what's on your left side is your true nature of the mind. And I ask you as your teacher to claim it. And that is what I'm doing here again and again by teaching you. And sattva, when your mind becomes pure sattva, because sattva literally means prakash or light, right? Sattva is so illumined as a particle that when your mind is full of sattva, you don't have to go anywhere or do anything or save the world to become self-realized. Your mind will become like this bright, shiny mirror in which you shall see your own divine face. You shall perceive the whole big divine reality right here in your mind. So this mind has to be rid of this ulcerish growth called samsara, which is full of judgments and opinions and also past conclusions. And that is why one of the prayers that I like to make to Bhagavan or Ishvara is to say that I don't know the answer to such and such thing, but let me receive the guidance from a higher space rather than from my own samsara, because it will give me the predictable, right? And that is why even when a student comes to a teacher such as myself in the Vedic tradition, we ask for surrendering. What do we ask you to surrender? And Westerners get really afraid of the word surrender, and they should, rightfully so, because you examine who you are having this conversation with. But surrender your samsara at the feet of your teacher, and and really like keep catching yourself. So when my mind gets active, one of my practices in the past was samsara, and I'd close my eyes, or I would pray and say, relieve me of this, and I would just feel this lightening, that like this relief that's happening. And then that is why we call ourselves at Vedika now a Sattva farm, because I am teaching you through every recipe, every food, through our Ayurveda teachings, our yoga teachings. Did you enjoy them? Yeah, our yoga teachings, our mantra teachings. With every act, you are actually increasing the ratio of Sattva versus Rajas and Tamas. I have students who come to me and say, I need to come closer to what you are teaching. I feel very far out, somebody said to me. And I just want to say to that student that, sure, in your samsara, Shunya becomes a distant memory. A pleasant memory, I know, for that student, but a distant memory, because at every moment, until we have really like broomed well, the Rajas and Tamas keep coming back, but with enough sattva accumulated within us, what will happen is we don't have to go to a hypnotist or regression therapy or a shaman. Right within ourselves, our sattva will reveal all our past lifetimes, our unconscious stuff, our projections. We'll have, like if we were having a 30-degree view of ourselves in the outer world, we'll have a 360-degree view. And then people call you a wise person. And then you're not making mistakes, emotional mistakes, relational mistakes, speech mistakes. Dharma would just shine through you. So it's an automatic given, and it's, such a beautiful map. But recently what I saw was that if a student was having difficulty with someone outside themselves, they would kind of blame that person outside and say samsara, like the world is difficult. But actually not always, but sometimes. So I want to like go back in and say, yeah, even with what's happening in our political world right now, worldwide and in our nation, we still have to be accountable for our own samsara. Are we so gripped with what we want that we can't allow the world to go through its own tamas and rajas, an exposure of its dark side, so that healing can take place? So we almost have to separate from things. And samsara wants to imprison us. Samsara wants us to be like deep within us. We're really holding on to those ropes. And that is why I had a student who wanted to do well in her life spiritually, but I had to ask her to stop talking to an astrologer. Because she would talk to me, her guru, and then she would remember what the astrologer said. And apparently the astrologer had like a stronger, sway on her than her own guru. So it's like, and the astrologer, keep going back to the astrologer or to somebody who will fix us, or they will tell us which mantra to wear, which ring to wear, because somehow we want what we want to come true. But Vedanta, and I'm not against astrology because, Baba himself was an astrologer, but it's like somewhere in Vedanta, all of these things, they strengthen our samsara. Like we change attorneys, then we change our astrologers, then we change our priest. People in India hire astrologers and priests to perform huge ceremonies to appease Saturn and Rahu and all of that. And they spend thousands of dollars in trying to get to somehow manipulate the karma so that it can flow better for them. So it's one thing to use astrology to understand what is your samsara like, and then, but still the will and the purushartha to overcome it is up to us. So, for example, my astrology says that you are going to have difficult relationships all your life. And every kind. Except when you're a teacher. That's the only relationship that will flow for you. As if like I can't be like a wife, a mother, a niece, a daughter-in-law, a neighbor. Oh no, just stay away, be a monk. Well, okay, I accepted all that. But then I got to work. I took it upon me to say, this is where I'm unconscious. This is where my samsara acts up. And that's why it's difficult. This is what I've been bringing along in my life. This is why I don't know how to be in a relationship. And I can tell you, and Vimla can confirm, and many students can confirm, I have turned around every relationship in my life. Every relationship. And the most personal ones are the people who think I'm the best thing that happened to them. So my uncle, who's an astrologer who learned from Baba, confirmed to me that you have gone beyond your astrological chart. And this is what I invite you. Do not think Vata, Pitta, Kapha are boxes that are going to hold you. Many people even use Ayurveda to say, but after all, I'm a Pitta. What does that mean? That means nothing. That just means you eat a little more cooling foods. And don't let your samsara take your anger as for granted. So this is what samsara does. It finds nice little righteous excuses to be a certain way. And Vedanta wants you to blow those boxes and be totally in your sattvic nature so that you can then receive a darshan, a blessing from your own self, which is none but divine Brahman. So if you want that big, the highest, that Brahman, that consciousness in which we all dwell in which we all live, and in which we all find our being, and that which we can all find within ourselves once we broom away the samsara and lighten it and shine it, then that is surely the highest that any being can aspire for. And also, we are inbuilt to witness it. Our spirituality is our instinct. And that each one of you here is inspired by that, not by ordinary things. So it really begins with samsara. And no, if your spouse or partner or significant other or child is not in this room, don't go and repeat this lecture to them. Just take care of your samsara. And then I'll share something with you. As the right side of your mental samsara calms down, and more your left side sparkles, your family will get aligned and bow to you and love you and follow your teaching. You don't have to hold somebody's shirt and lecture them and teach them. You see, because there is only oneness. There is only one being, not numerically one, but one at the level of consciousness. And if the more your own mind with its sattva content becomes aligned with that root consciousness, what impact do you think you will have on your own family members? What impact will you have on your community? What impact will you have on your enemies? That is why Patanjali said that when you calm your own vrittis and touch your own sattva, even wild beasts sit around and, wag their tails like they're like little, labradoodles, So the reality is that and the objective world is really benign actually, It's like this, karma works like this. Okay, Shreyas, I'll just use you as an example. Okay, Shreyas, when you left your last body and you dropped your last gross body, and your subtle body was there, and the causal body. And these are concepts that we can revisit, but they are also on our YouTube channel about 3 bodies: causal, subtle, and gross. So what is called death is just dropping the gross body, because it is made of matter, it is perishable. But whatever is less perishable, such as your mind, intellect, senses, what is causal, your karma, along with the perennial, what is perennial, which is your spirit, you move on. And you find another gross body in another womb. So obviously Shreyas found a human womb. So a human womb is a good womb, because at some point he's getting an opportunity to be self-aware. Now he can ask, because when he was in an animal womb, a plant womb, Shreyas' soul could only participate in the truth, participate in it. He was conditioned to participate in it, not question it, not look at it with awe. But in the human womb, he can ask, who am I? Who is God? What is this world and what is this world? And why are they not, okay, like outside he might be getting a guard, and inside the inner world can say you're not worth it. So they're not aligned, right? So, but he, in the human birth, can align it with knowledge, with jnana. Now, when he left his last body, there is Ishvara, and there are Ishvara's officers, right? In the form of, in astrology, what we call the planets, but they're not planets. They're not made of earth and river and nitrogen and oxygen. Graha means officers. Just like you are a being, there are other beings. You can't see them, but they are celestial beings of very high merit. And they all work and to control the whole universe. And so every chapter, every day, every moment of Shreyas' life is mapped. So the exact womb was chosen, mother, father, and then it looked, okay, wonderful, Shreyas, you have done some very meritorious deeds, and you have done charity, and you have tried to really be whatever in a good sense. So now, therefore, on this date, you shall find, a sampradaya which tries to give you genuine knowledge. But you see, you had you had a choice, but you fell unconscious and you behaved in not that manner. So sorry, Shreyas, exactly 15 years after you meet your teacher, she might disappear from your life, and then you'll only have 15 years with her, and then you'll be on your own, Shreyas. And then 25 years after you've met your teacher, you shall be challenged and questioned that do you really know the knowledge, because you see you had challenged it. And so everything is mapped. So some good things are coming, then so they are being taken away, then you are being tested, then you are being rewarded. And all you can do is, based on what is the quality of your samsara, you are either creating more karma that binds you, or you are performing dharma that frees you. Are you in karma or karma yoga? That will be up to Shreyas. But Shreyas, just because Shreyas got a sampradaya and a Vedic teacher, and he has an art and skill of cooking, and yeah, I met his mother, a beautiful mother. So all these positives, but if we really evaluate him, there will be some difficulties also along his life. And that's just the way, it's the makeup. It's the makeup of this universe. I was looking at I think, is it KQED or something, but an animal channel called Banded Brothers. It is the story, they are tracking mongoose, a family of mongoose in Africa. And you must look it up, Banded Brothers. And how they band together and they work for survival. And how many emotions they have, because they also have samsarahas, little mongoose samsarahas. And how karma plays out on there also. They have some dominant mongoose, in the family. But then they have some enmity with the Stripe brothers, which is another family that's trying to take over the territory. So in the process, Banded Brothers have to move around a lot. And somehow with the mongoose, they might get pregnant at different time, but they will always give the birth on the same day. This is great pressure on the family. But the stripe brothers can attack at any time in their territory, so they have to constantly move. But in the process of moving, many move, but then I saw that one or two of them get left behind. Then they deal with sun and no water and animals coming to them, and they are crying for their mother. They are so their suffering is as much as the suffering you may have for your mother or your job or your fame or disfame. And they are bleeping and they are looking and they are helpless. And then I saw how the mother was also counting her babies. Where's my baby? So she also now doesn't know where the baby got left behind, because she had to keep moving because the little mongoose were moving. So this is all going on in nature. Every being, even a piece of grass, is under karma. But we just somehow, with our attractions and our repulsions, we are just going around expecting that we are going to be the prince and princess. And, and any time something doesn't go for us, we'll stamp our feet and we will either get aggressive or go into depression. And we really forget that that's a setup, and that the difficult people in our life were also part of the setup. So when I have a very difficult person come in my life, it's been some time, but this is how I did it. I'm like, namaste, my karma come alive. I'm going to be really, really super gentle with the difficult people rather than say, oh, you're difficult. What's the point? This difficulty is incarnate me because I was difficult to someone, somewhere, somehow. And how I behave now is my opportunity. So we have people who we think are dead weight on us. We have people who are freeloaders. These are our labels, right? Freeloaders, selfish, flaky. Drop these words and say, I am having Karma Deva visit me. Use this technology, these new words. The God of Karma visit me. And I am therefore really taking care of my samsara, because the moment a difficult comes, something that we don't like comes, we get all like, all our guns are out. And when something that we are attracted to comes, we get all like, we turn over like a puppy and we have no resistance and we want more and more and more. And actually, from a student perspective, when you get what you like is when you'll walk away from your kula, because you get pleasures outside. And when you have difficulty, you come into your kula. I want my teacher. But the reality is, the real goal here is to calm down, take your teacher's partnership and help. Your teacher is like a mentor to support you and say, calm this rajas and tamas down. Some of us can even develop a lot of rajas and tamas in the kula. That's why you are given seva, to look at your rajas tamas, but then say, no, I'm doing it purely as, let me give it to Brahman. Let me give it to Brahman, karma yoga. And then gradually, as sattva shines, we feel better.
So we have now received these teachings, and now we'll have our full 5 minutes of silent contemplation. Set aside your pencils and paper. And the intention to set here is, let me contemplate on what I have just heard. So we keep bringing the mind to, what did I just hear, and what is the echoing happening within me? Let's also try to be in silence together. So if you're in a space that allows, you can unmute yourself, just to give us the sense that we are silent, but in the same room. So I'll begin our 5 minutes, and I'll give just a few small reminders to come back inside of that 5 minutes, but mostly silence. We'll begin. As you begin, the mind may grasp for things to hold on to. Let your thoughts bubble without attachment. Keep coming to the intention of let me contemplate on what I've just heard. Be patient. Allow the thoughts to settle. Keep the intention of finding what of our teacher's words are echoing within. What did I just hear that is resonating within me? If the mind wanders, bring it back to the intention of I am currently sitting in contemplation. Continue to come back to how does my inner reflection connect to the original satsanga I just heard. We're doing a Vedantic contemplation on received knowledge. In our final 30 seconds of mananam, begin to draw your contemplation to a resolution. Review your experience and mentally articulate what is the primary word or insight that has emerged for you in this silent contemplation. Take these last few moments to distill your insights for yourself in the quiet of your own heart and mind. So we've now completed 5 full minutes of mananam. I invite you to bring your awareness back to the room where you are physically. Turn your awareness to this virtual room that we're all sharing. Go ahead and bring your microphones back on mute as we'll be opening the floor. So now we have time for sharing. And in this mananam process, it's okay if your mind went totally blank. Maybe there was still a comfort in that okayness, in that blankness. Perhaps something arose for you, an image or an analogy or an idea. Maybe you had an emotional response. Maybe threads of ideas were connecting, or you received a question to an answer to a question you'd been sitting with. Or maybe there was just a single word that kept ringing for you. Anything can occur in this process of mananam. This practice is the silent inner presence. That's our practice. So what happens in mananam is whatever came up for you, that is now yours because it's emerged from within. You never lose this knowing. And this knowing that emerges from mananam, this is the gift, this is the fruit of mananam on wisdom teachings. So I'd like to now invite, if anyone would like to share a reflection. There are so many facets of what we heard, so we all would have had a different experience and a different inner insight. So if anyone would like to, the floor is open. I know you're emerging from a deep silence, but you're welcome to share. Hmm. 5 minutes of mananam does not feel like enough, does it? James, would you like to share with us?
Yeah. I think what the memory that came for me was this, in a sense that we have to stand alone. We have to take action alone. We have to know if we're in tamas or in rajas. And the only way to move from one to the other is through this action. And we shouldn't have this, I'm speaking to myself, we shouldn't have this over-reliance on others, telling us maybe what to do, or for us thinking that I need something, the teaching is important, but I already have the teaching and it's been enlivened through the teacher. And I think also what was beautiful is that then we're absolutely kind of independent. And the suggestion was that by concentrating on the sattvic practice, experiencing it and returning to it, that then things that are important to us would become important to others without us having to go in and kind of waving the flag. And I thought that was kind of wonderful. And it just shows you the beauty of this practice, that it's very natural and it's kind of effortless. But of course, it's totally at odds with the way that we normally live our lives. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I liked to see that smile on your face. A lot of times it's when you say we're in this alone, but I see the smile on your face shares with us also that it's actually a very empowered state of being. It's not lonely. Yeah, so many facets of what you shared. Thank you. I see Jayanti, Arunala, and then, yes, let's hear from you first, Jayanti.
Jema, everyone. Mine it's more of a question that I have for you, Ishani, that came up during this mananam, and it's when Acharya Shunya said, when we're faced, she gave the example of difficult relationships, and she even shared her experience. And so she said that, okay, she went past those difficult relationships, just reminding herself that's samsara, right? But then she also brings in this second um, how can I say? Then she talks about karma, saying, okay, when we're faced with a difficult person, a difficult situation, a difficult relationship, we have to become gentle and understanding, because perhaps in another life, that's what we did. We were not so nice in that situation or with that person. So the question is, if a difficult situation, a difficult relationship is samsara, then why are we trying to fix it, looking at it as under the lens of karma, by
Yes.
saying, okay, let me behave, let me be nice, because perhaps I was not that nice in another life?
So Jayanti, there's a clarification here. I'm glad you brought this question. It is, I'll just share one slide which summarizes what she says about this, and then how it juxtaposes with what you've shared. So she says that difficulties in samsara, there's a slide here which says, difficulties in samsara point us to where we are unconscious and need to get to work, was one of her words. And that we are not boxed by our astrology, doshas, rajas and tamas, our past histories, all these kind of things. So the key piece here is we see the difficult person as showing up due to karmic circumstances. This is the setup, as she says. Due to our past actions, our past unconsciousness, yes, all that is there, and they're showing up due to these karmic circumstances. We are not a victim here. And so we see this because we see it as samsara. We see it as a setup. And we see our samsara, our suffering, our aversion to the difficult people as part of our mental construction of samsara. So when she said gentle, she did say, I treat them gently. I think my interpretation of that word is not, I be kind to them, I grovel at them with apologies of how I must have treated them so poorly in a past life. Not that kind of gentle. Gentle means delicately, consciously, in a very awake way, without reactivity, without inciting more raga, dvesha, without going through this cycle of attachments. So gentle, yes, and also in an awake way where we own our own samsara. We own our own mental suffering, and we become very aware of how we resist the presence of this person. Like she said, Namaste. This is my karma come alive. I love that phrase. So when we see these difficult people, we see them as part of a karmic setup, their presence, but then we also become hyper aware in those difficult relationships of how now we choose to respond. Does this so the key clarification I wanted to make in what you said is we are not being gentle or careful or accommodating with difficult people as a penance for negative actions we've done in the past. We are being gentle, conscious, awake, accommodating where we need to be, but also firm boundaries where we need to be, because we're cleaning up our own samsara, because we're responding with dharma rather than more unconscious karma actions, just unconscious actions in that slope of emotional responses. Does this speak to what your question was, Jayanti?
Beautiful explanation, Ishani. Yes.
No,
Yeah,
that was
yeah, your explanation was just beautiful. Yes, yes. No, I get it. Thank you so
wonderful.
much for clarifying that. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see a raised hand. Is this Cheryl who's there on the phone? Cheryl, we can hear, let's hear from you now. I'm not able to hear you, dear. Are you muted? Are we able to connect with you, Cheryl? I'm sorry, but I can't hear your voice.
Cheryl, your showing is being unmuted on our end, so perhaps there's a separate mute control on your phone.
All right. Cheryl, I'll ask now Suchira to share, and we'll try and circle back to you. Okay, Suchira.
Thank you, Niji. Oh, I don't know if Shell, do you want to speak? I'm not sure if you were able to unmute at your end.
It seems there's a connectivity
There's a
challenge
connection
there.
problem.
Okay, we'll hold
Um,
Cheryl.
Yep. During the contemplation, I think the word that kept coming back to me, and I felt like my mind kept resisting it, was surrender. The more I resisted the word, the more it came to me. And finally, I actually at some point just gave into it. So surrendered to the surrender, actually. And I think that's the word that is standing out for me today from Shunyaji's teachings. Even, what she said about the prayer that she puts in when she's having these these samsaric difficulties, when she says that, let me get the guidance from my highest self. And when I think about my own life, that is one area where I have a lot of resistance. That illusory control of the ego, saying that I control everything. So if there's good, I control it. If there's bad, I control it more, actually. So I think for me, I feel at peace today with that word surrender. And it was funny how in the contemplative time, I kept resisting the word and it kept coming back to me. So I'm like, I'm going to surrender to the surrender now. So I just wanted to share that.
Did this word surrender come up for anyone else, I wonder? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Suchira, for sharing that. Yes, surrendering. And like she says, sometimes samsara is trying, she said something like samsara is trying to trap us. Samsara is, I mean, who is it that's trying to trap us? It's these gunas in our mind that are going on, creating rajas and tamas. And so that setup keeps us a bit stuck. And then she said, what do we surrender, or what are we surrendering? We're surrendering our samsara. So I like that distinction between, we're not surrendering our will, we're not surrendering our power to take conscious action, but we're surrendering our confusions. Yeah. So I'm sure that contemplation for you will give you such a rich answer to, what am I? Okay, I'm still have agency and empowered. As James had said, I can still do something, but also, what am I surrendering? Yeah. And what am I resisting surrendering? Ooh, there's something in there, Suchira. Julianne, did you want to share? I see you're asking to raise your hand.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I'll share. A couple words came into my mind during the mananam, and like regulate and regulation and choice were those words. And I was thinking of it like there's always a choice. Like we don't get to choose what happens out there in the world, but we can choose to just see it, and then are noticing how we're reacting to it. And then there's the choice. Like, okay, this person's really bothering me, but I'm just going to do this. Or, oh, I'm noticing I'm judging. Or it's whenever we awake that, noticing that we can regulate the samsara from just spinning out of control, and we like stay regulated ourselves. So that like regulate word was coming up. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Yeah, this clarity about what we can regulate and what we cannot. Doesn't that just kind of clear some things up? I can regulate these things, and those things that I'm trying so hard to regulate and getting so frustrated that I can't regulate, that are all out there and it's causing me so much suffering. Oh, those are just out of my scope of action. Those are out of my scope of activity. Let me just set that aside, and focus on what I can regulate, what I can happen. And as she describes, and as was mentioned in an earlier share, that the more we broom, she says, keep brooming it, the more we sweep out our own inner samsara, purifying it. Purifying means cultivating sattva, those qualities of light, clarity, balance, peace. That is how we clean up the outside world in many ways, clean up our relationships, clean up the suffering we feel about difficult people. Yes, yeah, that clarity brings such a focus to the way we move forward. Shall we try Cheryl again? Cheryl, would you like to try sharing with us again? All right, I think there's a phone challenge there.
Can you
Oh, yes.
can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
dear,
good.
please.
It's funny, all during this class I've been hearing these little key beep sounds. I'm not sure, maybe my phone was picking up something strange. I just wanted to say that the very beginning of the talk I found the most beautiful, just the idea that the natural state of the mind is sattvic, and the sense of just settling effortlessly into that, compared to the idea of regulating anything. Instead, we just settle into that natural state.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. That there was a clarity in the beginning where she said that, I'm sharing a slide here which says, the mind plus the world is samsara. The mind alone is sattva. So we have this pure sattvic mind within. And when it gets mingled with and tangled with the world, then it becomes our samsara. But the mind alone is sattva. So it is again, and this theme comes again and again in Vedantic teachings, that we are just coming back to our own essential nature. We're coming back to that truth. Yes. Any final shares, contemplations, reflections that anyone would like to bring forward? I'll just highlight maybe one or two more things as we close. These are a few other key points that came up in this series. One is she just started now introducing the idea of gunas, these vibrational qualities of the mind. And it is the guna of tamas that holds the mind in inertia and ignorance. And it's the guna, or the quality of the mind of rajas, which spins the mind in excessive, unexamined motion. So we've felt both of these things in our minds before, haven't we? And we can sensitize ourselves to being able to identify them when we're sinking into tamas, when we're spinning out into rajas. And she clarified that when the qualities of tamas and rajas are dominant in the mind, this leads to raga and dvesha. So in last week's session, we talked about raga and dvesha, attachments and aversions. So subtly becoming aware of these gunas of inertia and ignorance, or excessive motion, unexamined motion in the mind, is another way that we can do our inner housekeeping. She invited us in this session to sweep away rajas and tamas, to become a sattva farmer. And this phrase is so beautiful. She's saying that being gripped by rajas and tamas is optional, So our karmic setup, not optional. It's just there. The outer circumstances we're facing, not optional. It's just there. We are where we are. But being gripped by rajas and tamas is optional. And as was shared, our work here is to reclaim this true nature of our mind, our inner sattva. A quote from her in this session was, "Your mind shall become like a bright, shiny mirror in which you shall perceive your own divine face." So with every act, again, reclaiming that agency, reclaiming that self-regulation, what it means is to cultivate sattva. With every act, we can increase the ratio of sattva versus rajas and tamas. And there are many ways to practice doing that. That's through the foods we eat, it's through the lifestyle we live, it's through going to bed on time, it's through controlling our speech and not gossiping. There's so many ways of toggling that ratio, which we will continue to explore. And a library is being developed for all Vedic Studies Circle members. A beautiful team of Seva volunteers are cataloging those. And so there's a library of sattva building yogic and lifestyle practices that is coming into shape. So that will come soon for you. And the other thing to highlight is she, as someone mentioned, has this practice of saying samsara. As she mentioned, we should not say samsara is that thing out there, but it is my inner samsara. So it's my own attachments, my own aversions, my own overwhelming tamas, my own overactive rajas that is causing me this suffering right now. So samsara. And as I've been reviewing this video over the past week, this word has come back to me, samsara. And it pulls together all these threads all at once. So this is a practice that she offered us this week. And this slide I shared earlier about difficulties in samsara, they point us to where we are unconscious and need to get to work. We're not boxed in by all those things, but there are opportunities for learning. There are learning edges. And again, that idea that the outer world is benign. It's up to our samsara, whether we react with more unconscious actions that bind us further to samsara, meaning conducting unconscious karma, or response with conscious actions, dharma. That brings us closer to that freedom. So these are a few highlights I thought I'll also bring, as they may be something to continue to echo and contemplate as you move forward. The invitation here is to keep up this silence of mananam. Eat well, sleep well, so that when you do mananam, it's more deeply connected to that original satsanga. The more satsanga has a deeper meaning. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I know the sound was a challenge, but in the model that Acharya Shunya first encountered these teachings herself, the process was to listen to the teacher, silent mananam, and then to write. So if you feel inspired after further mananam to write something for yourself in your own journal, you can write something and bring it to our community forum. This is another way of deepening, articulating, and crystallizing what it is you've experienced, awaken within through the satsanga and mananam. So with that, we'll close. And we'll meet again next week for our next session, continuing this discussion. So thank you all, and Kalyani, I'll invite you to take us through our closing prayer as we finish for today.
Thank you, Sadhvi Ishani ji, for this mananam, and thank you to Acharya Shunya for the satsanga and the teachings. With that, I will invite you to join me in chanting our closing prayers. They come on the screen. You may read along, chant along, or simply listen. And on an inhale, we will chant together. Om Asato Ma Sat Gamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. Take care. We will meet again soon. Jai Ma.